I watched it, and I got to tell you something. I thought it was one of the best ones we've done. No,
Really?
yeah,
Well,
and
the
I'll tell.
funny thing is that I was gonna ask you. I was like, I hope you watched it before we go on. That way we can talk about it.
Well, this is it because I'll tell you why I thought it was one of the best things we did. First of all, it was more interactive. I mean, I didn't cut you off when you were talking. You asked me questions.
I'm
Okay,
glad that you asked me questions. Like,
off
so
when you were talking. You asked me questions.
I'm
Okay,
glad that you asked me questions. Like, so I like it when you ask me questions.
but
So
yeah,
it's like a conversation instead of you
well,
just
that's what I'm
taking
saying.
control of the entire conversation.
Yeah,
Like,
but I did. Okay, so I didn't do it that time. I was very cognizant of not doing that. That's number one. Number two, I thought that my information that I was giving, I
yes.
thought, man, I was on the other day. I mean,
Yeah. I
I
mean,
got it
I
right.
love it when you give information because that's the whole point. It's fun, it's interactive,
Well,
and it's information.
I was proud of myself. I said, oh my God, I was really talking smart. It was great. Okay, now I guess that's all I wanted to tell you. That, but I also like the fact that it was kept to a half an hour about Captain Willie's theory of the totally dark room. I think did I ever tell you that about that?
No, I don't remember that. That's
All
why
right, well, okay, well,
we're having this conversation because we have these sidebar
I
conversations
know.
on
Well,
phone, and then you start giving me all this like great information that basically every conversation we have should be a podcast.
I know it's true, but all right, here's what we're gonna do. So now, from this point on, it's going to be official. So you do your thing.
No, I all of this is going in.
No, it's not going in.
All of this is going in because I got your reaction of what you thought of the podcast. That was very great, so all of this is going in.
All right, fine. Okay, so then here we go. So
Okay.
we were talking about the Netflix show Sex Education.
Yeah, so this is like part 3.
Well, yeah, and now we don't really. I mean, but now what I my feeling about it when we first did the first part was that was the like I said in my little blurb that you asked me to write. It really was the springboard for having conversations about sex and sexuality in general, and certainly as it regards adolescence.
Yeah.
Okay, because
Hmm.
certainly. By the way, see the shirt?
Yes.
I thought, I guess this background is brown. And when I saw it in the closet, I thought it was purple.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Purple.
I have
No,
a,
it's brown. I have never seen this ever. So I'm glad this is
this
shirt
this is
number 34.
whatever, however many podcasts we've done, that's what it is.
34, I think it is.
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, okay, so uh, and I was talking to about the obviously they're going through, like most adolescents, they're saying, okay, they're searching for their identity. Who am I? What am I? Where have I been? Where am I going? And how does my sexuality
That sexuality plays into all of it and their identity.
yeah, because I mean, I can't imagine, because I can't imagine being confused about my sexuality
Hmm.
and how that would have affected my adolescence. In other words,
Yeah. Yeah.
how it would have affected the kinds of people I hung out with and my friends, and
Yeah.
maybe what it meant for going into a career. I just didn't have that. Is that none of those adolescents really would celibacy would have been something that there's some of them were still virgins, but mostly they were trying to lose their virginity, like most
Yeah.
of us were.
Yeah.
I mean, like most young men, I was happy to lose my virginity. Let me tell you that right now. I mean, what was I going to do? Well, here's one for you now.
Yeah.
Here's something I used to. Goes under the I call it the Captain Willie's theory of the totally dark room.
Mm.
And I
Which is
used
why we're doing this podcast. So we
well,
can
that's yeah.
support.
Let me explain what that was.
Yeah.
Part of the problem with the churches try to make people feel guilty about sexuality and whatever, because what's that? What's the point? Is it a sin? No. Most religions want control. They know that the most powerful, one of the most, the three major uh, urges for human beings that are inescapable
Hmm.
is hunger, thirst, and sex.
Hmm.
We all got to eat. We all got to drink, and
Yeah.
one way or another, want to have
Yeah.
sex. Nature wants us to have sex, right?
Yeah, to keep
Right.
us, keep the race
Yeah,
going.
right. So, but now the problem is, okay, we could easily get something to drink. We can easily get food in our culture. Okay.
Hmm.
But the one thing that religions tend to do, and even certain political, you know, governments try to do, is to control people's sexuality, because that's one of the hardest things to control. If you can
Yeah.
control what people do in the privacy of their own bedroom, you can get them to vote the way you want. You can get them to work the way you want. You're putting them in a position where they're going to feel so guilty and so restricted about indulging in this sexuality that you can get them to do other stuff. Okay. And so it's really about control. It's sick.
Control.
It's about control. Right?
Control and fear.
Well, yeah, whatever. So now, but I used to always paraphrase the modern poet Gertrude Stein. She was kind of a well-known lesbian, and she had she had a salon. Real, I forget. I think it was in Paris. I forget, in France. But she had all kinds of artists and poets and writers, and they would drink and smoke dope and all kinds of stuff. Anyway, but she did a poem, and in it she said, one of her lines was, "A rose is a rose is a rose." Okay, it makes perfect sense. What's a rose? Define a rose. Well, that's. And I used to paraphrase her all the time. Okay, and I would say an orgasm is an orgasm is an orgasm. Okay,
Hmm. Hmm.
which leads me into Captain Willie's theory of the totally dark room.
Yes.
And my notion was, and I used to say this in high school classes. Okay, I said, like, consider the following. Because so much of our culture that says, well, they call you names if you are a woman is highly sexual, okay, or if people are homosexual or bisexual, or they judge and they criticize and they try to control that behavior or get you away from that behavior. I said, but here's the bottom line, okay? In Captain Willie's totally dark room, whatever happens in that room, no one would ever hear about it in the world. Not your friends, wouldn't be online, nobody in school, not your parents, nobody. In other words, whatever would happen in that room is strictly going to stay in that room. It's like with Las Vegas.
I know. I was just thinking, I was
Right?
like, this is similar
Yeah.
to like what
Well,
happens.
exactly. What happens in Las Vegas stays
Yeah.
in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who's saying came first, yours or Vegas?
I probably my theory probably came before that. I mean, I've felt this way a long time. But my notions are following. Would anybody care? I wouldn't care who or what gave me an orgasm that sent me over the moon.
Hmm.
Okay. In other words, if I was being pleased in a way that wouldn't, since I wouldn't know when I say who or what, for example, it could be a machine, could be a robot. It
Could
could
be
be
an AI machine, just like we're talking
Yeah,
about
exactly. It could be an AI. It could be a man. It could be a woman. It could be,
ChatGPT.
I must say this though, and consciously, I probably would draw the line at big farm animals. Okay, giving me an orgasm. But you want the truth? If they can come up with an animal that maybe have a great orgasm, I guess I would. Again, I wouldn't know that it was an animal. I wouldn't know that it would be a machine.
Yeah.
All I would know is, man, I am feeling great.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when I walk out of that room, I still wouldn't know who or what gave me the orgasm, but I go,
Hmm.
oh my God, I had this great orgasm. You
Hmm.
see?
Hmm.
And that's a notion that I think I had a student, I may have told you on the phone. I had a student who was a Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
by the way, some teachers and some schools have problems with Jehovah's Witnesses. I never had one. I mean,
Hmm.
I didn't have any Jehovah's Witness parents come in and say, I don't want my kid to read that book. And, blah, blah, blah. And so he comes back. He's now, I think he went to college.
Was he always Jehovah Witness when he was in your class?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So winds up, he comes in, and of course, I guess we were chatting, and he goes, "Hey, by the way," he said, "Do you still?" Because he was fascinated. Do you
Yeah.
still tell your classes about your theory of the totally dark room? I said, "Yeah, of
Hmm.
course. Why not?" I'm trying. I'm trying to expand their horizons. I'm trying to get
Yeah.
them to
To
understand.
like think about every aspect of things.
Yeah, and also the other issue too is, I hope it helps them to not be judgmental
Hmm.
about their friends who are
Different.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's one of the problems we have to look at how everybody you get that you get these crazy all these religions. You got Islam, you got Christianity, and you got Judaism. All three are what
Mhm.
they call Abrahamic religions.
Yeah.
They're all like children of Abraham, right? They're
Mhm.
all worshiping allegedly the same God, and yet they've been killing each other for centuries, right?
Yeah, so like every religion basically, aren't they all one God?
Well, no, I mean, look, there are other religions that were polytheistic. I have like in Japan, people in Japan are Buddhists and some people are Shintos, and
Yeah,
Shinto.
yeah, except for like I'm saying like the generalized ones
Yeah,
of
yeah,
like
but what I'm saying is that of the big religions, the three
yeah.
big religions around the world,
Mhm.
they're all allegedly worshiping the same deity, okay?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yet they have all these little bizarre rituals that kind
Yeah,
of
but they're all
make them
divided
different.
and fighting each
Yeah,
other.
yeah. And I'm thinking, well, so I think you guys are kind of missing the point here.
Yeah, totally,
But
totally.
that's me.
I always believe like if you're gonna believe in a religion, it should be all inclusive and you should be accepting of everybody and you should love everybody.
Yeah, but well, Christianity says that, but there's nobody worse than these Christian groups that are at each other's throats. Okay,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
also, again, I said this in a book discussion just last month. It's not that I mean, yeah, I may be an atheist, but you know what? Lots of religions have some positive things to say, and their holy books have a lot. I mean, I said it last episode. There's some good in all the books, right? And I'm not having a problem with that. What
Yeah.
I'm having a problem is how we as human beings are a terrible species. We're savage, we're barbaric, we're bloodthirsty. Okay,
Mhm, mhm.
we commit acts of genocide with abandon. Okay, we have over the centuries. The fact of the matter is, I have a problem
And then we
with
try to remove it from our
yeah,
books
yeah, but that's
and
true.
libraries and we try to ban it. Do not say the word. Don't they aren't they trying to like remove the word slavery also in like school and books?
You know what, Linda? You're probably right about that.
I feel like I heard something
I
about
don't.
that
Yeah, yeah. And,
recently.
listen, nothing would surprise me with that kind of stupidity. Okay,
Mhm.
but where I was going with this is that my problem has always been with no matter what the religious group is, that they take the best part of the religious values that are supposed to be espoused, like Christianity, and they corrupt them, they pervert them, they
Mhm.
destroy. I mean, Jesus Christ would be horrified. Back, I always talk about some of the groups believe in the second coming, capital S, capital C, that Christ is going to return. Okay,
Mhm.
well, they better hope he does not come back,
Mhm.
because when he comes back and sees what these nincompoops have done with his religious philosophy. Oh, he's going to come back. He's going to take him by the scrawny redneck,
Like
shake
he's
him.
not gonna be he's not coming back as the same person. Like no one who
No, no,
died
no, no.
comes
He's
back
supposed to come
dead.
back as the same person. But my point is, he's going to shake him till their whatever two brains they have left in their head are there, and then he's going to toss them in the deepest, darkest pits of hell and chaos and whatever, because he's going, you people, yeah, you were sinners and you were supposed to follow my path, and you'd be saved from your sinfulness. That's what the priests do. They do confession, okay, to make your soul free again. Well, guess what? It's not working. And if Christ comes back, he's going to say, you know what? You lose. You paid no attention.
Yeah.
You corrupted every thing that I told you in the New Testament, or,
Mhm.
or they said that I said in the New Testament. So guess what? That's one of the reasons why I'm not such a big fan of religion. I don't know that it's helped it,
Mhm.
people.
Mhm. Mhm.
Let me rephrase that. I'm sure there are some people who took it seriously and tried to live by those
The good
principles.
parts of it.
Yeah, I'm sure it helps some of them, but I'm finding that the world has not been made better by most of those religions, because look at the stuff that's going on in the Middle East. That's all part of the nonsense,
It's all religion, right?
But I mean, let's go back to the theory of the totally dark room.
Yeah.
When you have a situation where you say, I'm going to have this great sexual experience and not be judged for it, and not be abused for it, and or controlled because of it, that's true liberation. That's a
Mhm.
truly
Mhm.
liberating experience.
Yeah, and that goes into like everything, every other aspect of all of these kids who are trying to find their identity and how to be in this world. You know, that was a really nice part. I rewatched I think the first couple episode where so there was a point where it was beautiful. Eric was walking down the street and this one car stops and there was a black man in the car, older gentleman, and he
Right.
had his nails painted. He looked masculine, but he was dressed in, you know, a very artsy kind of, you know, attire. And he looked at him and he saw himself,
Right.
him, where he was like, oh my God, like a version of him if he was older, but he can be free to express himself, wear nail polish, dress in colorful attire, and be openly gay, but be masculine at the same time. And he saw
Right.
himself in him. And then that gave him the permission, like you did, to be himself,
Right.
which I thought was beautiful.
Now you said something interesting about being masculine. You know, this is another problem in our culture. People mistakenly define masculinity, I think, in ways that are just they're missing the point. They talk now about young men being told that there's toxic masculinity, and if they're acting a certain way, they're toxic, and it's a real put down.
So maybe the masculine word is not the word I'm trying to say. Maybe more authentic.
Well, that makes more sense for me as an existentialist kind of,
Yeah,
you know.
so more authentic, not like masculine. So I'll rephrase that context.
I
He's
remember
more authentic, where he's comfortable in his own skin to be whoever he wanted to be.
I remember once one of my mentors, who was an older woman, okay, and she was really very instrumental in also giving me a perception of the world that I would not have had I not met her. And it was obvious that she was very attractive and everything else, and she was about easily 20 years older, if not more, 25 years older than I was. And I realized that she probably was very willing to sleep with me. And I definitely felt at one point, yeah, I could work that out. I could do that.
How old were you?
Well, I was in my I guess I was, let's say I was 25. So she had to be what? She had to be 40-ish. And certain things stopped me. One of the things was that her oldest son was only three years or so younger than I was, and that was number one.
Yeah. So then
And
now
I didn't want to have to deal again.
Yeah.
Talking about judgment, I didn't want to have to deal with people on the beach saying, "Oh, look, he's sleeping with so and so's mother." And so and of course I had a problem at the beach where, like, there were a lot of beach girls, but I wouldn't sleep with them because it was like high school. In other words, all of a sudden, I want everybody to know my business. If I was sleeping with certain women, they were not from the beach. They were other places, and I didn't necessarily take them to the beach. Okay, I kept that part of my life separate.
You kept your sexual.
Yeah, well, there's a part of me that's always been private.
Yeah,
that's why I lived alone, and I can't. That's who I've always been. Anyway, I digress. But she told me once about how one of the most we would talk. We had these always really great conversations, and she was reading a couple of books. I was reading, like Love and Will, that I'm doing next month, and at the book discussion, and a few other things. And she said to me, she goes, one of them. We're talking about masculinity because you see all these hot looking guys on the beach, and it's hot women. And she said, but the most masculine man I ever knew was short, fat, and bald. Okay. I said, really?
Yeah.
And then she explained to me why that was. Okay. How she as a woman, an older woman, defined masculinity.
Yeah.
And she kind of said things like I've kind of said to you over the years about, well, this is a guy who was reliable and committed in his career, and whose word was bond. If there was a problem, he would help you. Whereas he had a certain inner strength that was manifested in his actions when he dealt with certain kinds of things. Certainly dealt with her, dealt with people she knew, and she said he was had a certain level of courage socially. He was, and she said, and yet if you looked at him, you say, well, gee, he's kind of a nebbish. He looks, he's that doesn't have big muscles, and he's got no hair, and and so and I, from that the conversation, I really had to say, well, yeah, it's one thing to have, like, what we be muscle bound and athletic and so forth and so on, but that's not what makes a man. For example, as a teacher, I used to go crazy when I used to find students whose fathers, for example, had abandoned them. She just said, I've seen it in my own family. All of a sudden, a guy has, 1, 2, 3 kids and decides to say, I'm out of here. And just off he goes. Leaves the wife holding the bag, these kids without a father, without an income a lot of times. And it's just like, how do you do that?
How do you live with yourself to do that?
Yeah. Now, and to me, it's really animalistic. I mean, so for example, I call those people, I had to tell one young man, I said, don't think of him as your father. He's your sire. It's like a horse, mounting a mare. He gets her
sire.
He's a sire. That's not a father. Okay. The father is the guy, is your stepfather.
Who's there for you.
Yeah. The guy the guy who married your mother and has been helping to raise you for the last, 10 years. That's your father. Because he's doing what a father does. And he goes, you're absolutely right. He goes, I get that. He says, but I just understand what my sire, why he did what he did. I said, I got news for you. I don't know. I don't know. In fact, that's another thing too with students. As knowledgeable as I'd like to think I am, I only had 2 responses with students when they ask certain questions. First would be, I don't know. I don't know. Okay. And the second one would be, it depends. So they said, well, what do you think about this? I would then say, well, it depends.
So you don't think that everything's black and white.
What's that?
You don't think everything's black and white?
Of course not. If I learned early on, I learned in high school, the world was not black and white. The world is gray.
I just think that, I agree. That's why I think it's funny, because I had a conversation with someone where they were really trying to tell me that everything is black, white. And I'm like, no, that it doesn't work that way. Everything is not black and white. It just frustrated me to no end to have that conversation.
But Linda, you have to understand that a lot of people who are religious say that is.
I know, and it frustrates me too.
They believe in an absolute truth.
There's no, just like you said, there's no perfection. There's no absolutes. The world doesn't work that way. Nature doesn't work that way.
Certainly on this planet, when people talk about God, for example, what they're saying is, God represents an absolute truth.
There's no absolute.
You can't say that when, first of all, you can't even prove that God exists. Okay, forget that. Okay, so, but I'm much more relativistic in the sense that certain kinds of situations require certain kinds of approaches and resolutions, and it's got to be on a case by case. For example, I used to hear. I had one teacher, one of my colleagues said, well, I teach all of my students the same. Terribly. All right. I said, no, yeah, but okay, I got the joke. Okay.
Oh, he said that? Terribly?
No, I didn't say it. No, I didn't say it. I mean, I said it was a colleague of mine who said it.
Yeah.
And I said, well, in other words, I'm not I have to look at the individual.
Yeah. I mean, like, you also, and each individual has a whole gamut of things that's happening to them at home, so they're coming in with all kinds of situations.
Oh, please. I mean, please, I could tell you stories that would curl your hair.
Yeah, I know. That's what the podcast is about. I like stories.
It's I think that watching sex education and seeing that their problems with their families, that's something that, I'm so used to that, about dealing with young people who come in and say, well, I love my parents, but you know what, they kind of are weird. They kind of this, I can't count on them. She's in my honors class, and a sweetheart. She comes in, and it was around time when students were applying to colleges and things like that. And she just broke down in sobs. I went, what's the matter? She goes, well, we have no money to send me to college, and and my mother. Now the father had gone. He was when he abandoned his daughter and wife. And but she's a religious fanatic, and she gives all the money to this stupid, televangelist.
instead of giving it to her to go to college.
Instead of paying the rent, instead of
Oh,
paying
and
the
save. Oh my
instead
God.
of paying the electric bill,
Yeah.
she was always poor because she's giving it to this idiot, you know,
Oh my
televangelist.
God.
I used to know the guy's name too. There was a bunch of them at the time.
Oh my
And
God.
she's crying, and I said, "Look," and I didn't know what to do with it. I said, "Look, this is, I mean," so I put my arm around her shoulder. She cried on my shoulder for a while. I said, "Look, the only thing I can do for you right now is I'll literally take you by the hand, and we'll go to the guidance office, and they may have,
Like a scholarship or
yeah, they may be somewhere that they can help you, or somewhere that they can deal with, even somebody to give your mother
yeah.
psychiatric care, whatever." I said, but it was stuff like that that you should drive me up a wall, because I'm thinking, you know what? Look at these nutty parents. I got this great, have these great kids,
Mm-hmm.
bright kids,
Mm-hmm.
all kinds of possibilities, and they believe in, their parents believe in nonsense. They're squandering money. Okay, this one woman squandering money on a stupid, Pentecostal televangelical religion.
Yeah.
Others are gambling it away, drinking it away,
Mm-hmm.
getting
Mm-hmm.
drug addicted. I mean, there and I also, though, knew some great parents. I knew some great grandparents. I mean, so you never knew
Mm-hmm.
with whom you were dealing until those young people would tell you, "Here's my home
Yeah.
situation." And I wouldn't pry. My attitude was, that they want to talk to me about stuff. They can. They can. In fact, I had to admonish one of my colleagues who I thought was too willing to
Himself.
involve himself in his students' lives. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I just said, no, that's no, that's, I mean, maybe you need the attention, maybe you want the adulate. I don't know what it is, but I have a big ego, but it doesn't go in that direction, and you shouldn't be going in that direction either. In other words, if students want your advice, if they want what they think you can offer them, they'll let you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, lots of times I'd have kids with certain kinds of problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that insofar as I was able to help them, I did,
Mm-hmm.
but that I didn't have what they probably needed. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And my hope was always that there was another one of my colleagues in the building who
Mm-hmm.
had the emotional.
What they needed for help.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, sometimes I would even go, there were certain teachers I said, you know what, this particular teacher, male or female,
Yeah.
has a quality that I think might be really helpful for this particular troubled student.
Mm-hmm.
And I was guessing. It was almost like I was a
So did you
pedagogue.
guess and then let them know, like, hey,
Well, I
pay
would let
attention to that
I would let the teacher know. I mean, I was like a pedagogical matchmaker sometimes. I felt
Yeah.
like I'm trying to say, well, gee, if I can get this kid and this teacher to connect,
Yeah.
maybe they can do something I can't. For example, I had a number of students, we all had, who were suicidal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And boy, I'll tell you, and when kids were really committed to suicide, it was like they wore it like a coat. I mean, it was all
And
over
they've told you this?
yeah. And everybody who knew them saw the same thing, that these were like seriously troubled people. And sometimes, we could talk them into a better frame of mind. I had one student, it was a terrible, terrible story. I'm not even going to tell you the specifics of it, but her friends knew, my colleagues knew, this was a girl who was, you'd have to lock her up in a padded cell to keep her from killing herself. We all tried. Every teacher she had, every guidance counselor, and didn't work. One day she just went home and killed herself. I mean, so this is one of those things where you do the best you can. Nerve-wracking when you deal with adolescents is that sometimes you don't know exactly what's putting them in that suicidal frame of mind. It's because they don't feel they're good looking enough, smart enough, rich enough, thin enough. I mean, it's a mixed bag. Okay.
Yeah, or they're chemically, mentally imbalanced.
Well, Linda, that's very smart of you. I have come to realize that sometimes it's not something that you can talk someone out of. For young people, adolescents, they're still trying to find themselves, and they're also trying to say, well, gee, I have limited
resources
and resources. because all of a sudden, because of my age. Okay. And so this is why when they look to older people, like, and guess what? Parents don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
But those kids go to their teachers. So yeah, so I think that when I was watching Sex Education, I kept flashing back to so many of the experiences I had with young people,
Yeah.
and especially regarding their choices. I remember clearly, and I used to tell this to some of my colleagues, even when I was still working at the university. I guess I retired from Stony Brook at 2015. But anyway, that my first couple of years of teaching, there was a very open clique of homosexual students, male and female. Okay. I was astounded by that. I came in, I'm fresh out of college and whatnot. And, I knew homosexuals of, all kinds, but it was so interesting to me that there was this very, very out group. Now, it was almost cliche because they were all heavily involved in the music and drama departments.
And that was like when you first started, that's like 1969, 1970, right?
I started, my first year was the 1968, 69 school year. That particular group of students was there for 3 years. I think some of them were the sophomores. Then I had a number of them in my junior and senior classes because I taught juniors and seniors for my first few years. But I was fascinated by the fact that they were openly gay, okay, and were not apparently, that I could tell, being abused or rejected or any way antagonized by the other students. They just said, okay, that's who they are. And, I was impressed by that, quite frankly.
Yeah, that's amazing that they were open and free.
Yeah, I was also impressed by a lot of my Black students and their families because I thought were wonderful when it came to people who were, let's say, handicapped or had other kinds of problems. Helpful, they were supportive. They were not in any way abusing them. They weren't, And so I said, well, gee, what a great community this is, because this has a lot of diverse people, different colors and religions, and seems to be working out. And I would always say about Central ISIP, after being there for 32 years, okay, that was the social integration experiment that worked.
I know, yeah.
It worked. In other words,
it worked.
Look at all the friends that you have who are not Asian, who are Black, who are Latino. I mean, look, and I mean, I could tell you all kinds of stories about friendships among young people, men, guys and girls of different races and religions, who were friends from the moment they met in Central ISIP, from elementary school all the way through, and it's still to this day. Yeah, because you know what, you guys, again, we're in such a diverse community. You just got used to it. I mean,
like race was not even an issue. Like, to me, like, I never really saw any of my friends as like, oh, they're this race, they're that race. No, like, to me, like, they were just my friends.
And going back again to this thing about sex education, one of the things I was fascinated by was the cultural, ethnic, and
diverse,
religious diversity of those students in that high school. Okay. And going back to the fact that, for example, Eric, I mentioned in the previous episode, but that here he was gay, flamboyantly gay, okay, and Black, and yet he was a Christian. He was religious, and he didn't want to get baptized. He wanted to get baptized, but he wasn't going to do it because his church that he belonged to was anti-gay. And he just
goes against his,
well, he says, why would I want to join a group that doesn't accept me, or doesn't accept people, even if they accepted him personally, they didn't accept, as he would say, people like me. And that's another thing, talking about trying to educate kids. I think I probably mentioned this one once in a previous podcast. There were a lot of young men in Central ISIP who sometimes they had a mean streak, and they'd say, well, if some gay guy, tried to, date me or approach me, I'd punch his lights out. And I said, no, I see, you guys, you're wrong.
Just take it as a compliment.
Well, that's what I would say to them. I said, look, I used to, I was on the beach mostly naked. Okay. I was in my Speedo ready to go into the do body surfing, and gays would hit me up, and I'd say, and I made it, kind of convivial. I would say, hey, look, uh, I, I, I don't go down that right. I, I appreciate the compliment. I can't argue with your taste in men because, yeah, like if I were gay, I'd be on me too. But you know what? That's not
Yeah.
who I am. And they would laugh,
And they would laugh, right?
and
Because
they'd
you made
go
a
off the
joke out
merry,
of it.
because, yeah,
Yeah.
because they said, okay, this guy is
It's
not
funny.
gay, and okay, that's what. Now I have to move on.
So we all need a little more humor like you, a little more wit and wisdom, and the world would be a better place. Accept everybody.
I'd like to think so. I think well,
Exactly.
I used to always tell your students and classmates about, if you made me God for a 4-day weekend, I'd solve the universe's problems. How about
Really. Like what? Well, we're gonna have to like continue this next time. We want to know how you would do that.
that? Oh no. Oh no. I mean, that comment was a level of arrogance and egotism that
I know, but that's just funny. We'll have to continue. So you'll have to think about that, and I want to know how you would change everything next
well,
time.
we'll see. We'll see. I'm sure we're going to have some other topics down the road.
Okay.
This would eat, drink, and be merry, and have a happy. This is where Thanksgiving is in a couple of days.
Yeah.
And that's the best I think I can come up with, is that look, I wanted my students to be as happy and fulfilled as I was at that age.
Mhm.
And I was very lucky. I mean, people, even people my age now, if they're still alive, they're miserable.
Yeah.
They're miserable. I'm thinking, what the hell if you made it to my age,
Yeah.
first of all, you're thankful you're still alive.
Mhm.
And most of the ones I know are not poor. So what the hell are you complaining about?
Mhm.
What are you whining about?
Mhm.
Okay. And on that note, speaking of wine, I think I'm going to have a late lunch
Yeah.
and drink some wine. How's that?
Oh, fabulous. Thank you. Thank you for joining me. And until next Tuesday.
Always a pleasure.